Well, welcome to the webinar, everyone. Another Wednesday, another opportunity for us to have a little lunch and learn at the same time. It's interesting because we were trying to figure out how to tag this thing, and there's all these words, science, disease, food, supplements, health, wellness. But the reality is the purpose of these lunch and learns is simply to make life simplified, to simplify the concept of life, to try to give you the information that you need so that you can make informed choices. And more importantly, so that you can support the people that you care about and that you love, and give them the right information so that you can get the results that you're looking for. So today's topic is going to be nutritional myths, what you believe is holding you back. See, the problem with most people's belief systems is they're not based upon personal knowledge. They're actually based upon the opinions or knowledge of others that they have heard, read about, or even reviewed on the internet. An example I have is this week I was contacted by somebody who was sure that something that they were doing was not right because they had read on the internet that they should be doing something in the morning, not in the evening. What they didn't understand is something else that they were already doing in the morning, had they combined the two, would have actually caused them harm, and that in fact they were supposed to be doing this in the evening, even though the experts, and I'm putting that in air quotes for you that you can't see, told them that they should be doing this in the morning. The reality is that's true about our daily diet lifestyle as well. There's a lot of things out there that we believe to be true that are resulting in us not getting the results that we're looking for. So today is all about taking that on head on. So nutritional facts. I always find it funny in this country that we say, nutritional facts are easy. Everyone should understand them. All you got to do is turn the bag over and you can understand it. The reality is this: if we really wanted you to understand nutritional facts on the back of a label, explain to me why all of them are written in the metric system, but yet in the schools and all the colleges and universities in this country, we still teach the empirical system of measurement. Yes, we're still in yards and feet and all the other things, even though everyone else is in meters and things of that nature. We simply don't understand grams, milligrams, micrograms, and all those things. We just don't get it. As a result, while it's there, no one's understanding it. In fact, most of the time it ends up looking kind of like this. Doesn't matter if you're the parent, the middle child, or the youngest child. We're still a very confused society when it comes to understanding what decisions we're actually making when we're at the grocery store. This quote kind of hit me when I was preparing this presentation. A lie can travel halfway around the world while the truth is putting on its shoes. Isn't that true? It is amazing to me the things that we're going to go through today that people are just convinced are true. They know for a fact they're true. They know without a doubt that this is scientifically proven to be true, when the reality is the truth couldn't be further from where they are currently in their belief system. It's just amazing that, one of the things that we do is we get ingrained in a belief system so firmly that we won't even take the time to listen to another opinion or another understanding, because the reality is this: none of us know everything. None of us is the answer for every particular situation. None of us has all those answers. And in fact, if we just sit back and listen, unlearn for a second everything that we think we know, listen to another opinion, you very well may learn something, and that's what today is all about. So, we've done, it's kind of this before, but never this way. I've done, kind of the top 3. I've done the top 5, but today I wanted to cover the top 10. The top 10 myths, if you will, in nutrition, nutritional myths. So let's look at number 1. Is this a myth or a fact? Losing weight is simple. Eat less and move more. Well, if you watched the presentation that we did last week on the Lunch and Learn, what you're going to know for a fact is this is, in fact, a myth. Eating less and moving more is not going to work. It just simply isn't. All of this started in 1977. The medical community began the shift of the American diet, or the daily recommended diet, to a low-fat, eat less, move more approach to health. What happened? Well, what happened is we went out and spent tens of thousands, if not millions of dollars on these studies. This was the Women's Health Initiative study. You can read all about it. That was published. I mean, the Journal of the American Medical Association is the one that published this. Hundreds of millions were spent on this one study. Hundreds of millions was spent on this one study. 50,000 women were included. They were, traveled over 7.5 year period. They basically were researched. Half of them reduced their calories by 30%. And they also increased carbs, fruits, vegetables, and grains, and also increased their, decreased carbs, increased fruits, vegetables, and grains, and then increased the exercise by roughly 14%. What they found was it showed a 13% reduction in metabolism and no weight difference between the do-nothing group and the study group. So 25,000 women, for over 7.5 year period, decreased their daily caloric intake, increased their fruits and vegetables and exercise by more than 14%, and had absolutely no difference whatsoever than the group that did absolutely nothing other than what they normally do. And oh, by the way, the waist circumference stayed the same as well. There was no difference in waist circumference, which meant for 7.5 years, 25,000 women were miserable because they were restricting themselves on certain things. They felt, they weren't satisfying what they were trying to eat or their pleasure centers and the dopamine response center of the foods that they loved. They were limiting what it was that they wanted to eat so that they could get absolutely no result whatsoever. Eat less, move more simply did not work. So then we decided, okay, well, if not women, let's look at kids. This was the healthy study published in the New England Journal of Medicine, because obviously if it doesn't work in adults, maybe it'll work in children. 42 schools, over 4,600 kids, same type. Half got the low calorie, low fat diet along with increased exercise. The other, hey, just be kids. At the end of 3 years, the do nothing group and the eat less, move more group had both reduced their obesity rates from 50% to 45%. Same exact results, no difference. In fact, if you actually look at what has happened since 1977 when we started this through 2000, and we started this whole medical approach to eat less, move more, and low fat, childhood obesity has more than doubled in ages 6 to 11, tripled in ages 12 to 19, and obesity-related disease has become so common that Americans have eliminated adult-onset diabetes as a medical term. In fact, now it's just referred to as type 2. If you're my age, you know what I mean when I say adult-onset diabetes. Now, because we have hundreds of thousands of cases of type 2 diabetes in children, we've eliminated the adult-onset component of the terminology, and now we just refer to it as a type 2 diabetes. So, myth or fact, number 2, body weight is a good measure of health. What's interesting to me is people know the answer to this, but yet they still fall into the trap. People know the answer, but they still fall into this trap. This is an absolute myth. What do I mean by that? All of these women, okay, you're looking at, here's a woman that's 5'2" that has a dress size of 14, up to a woman that's 6'1" who has a dress size of 10. Every single one of these women weighs 150 pounds. If weight was the true measure of health, okay, and weight was the only thing that we looked at, could you tell me that weight is a good measurement of health? It's just not the case. These women all weigh the same, but guess what? They're all different. They all are a different height. They all have different body composition and structure. Things change. The scale is not who you are. You're more important than the scale number. Okay, it just isn't a definition of who you are, and stop using it as your reason to feel frustrated. Stop using it as a measurement tool of how important you are, or more importantly, what your worth is. The scale is a measurement tool. That's it. It is nothing more than that. In fact, the main thing about the scale that you need to understand about is the healthy weight component. And a healthy weight is dependent upon your height, weight, and most importantly, your body fat percentage. Body fat percentage is the true measure of health. But remember, a healthy weight, whatever that is for you, remember that, again, this is just a weight measurement. It's a decreased risk of disease. It's better heart health. It's better sleep. Yes, if you're obese, it will affect your sleep cycle. And of course, it's also going to be, helping you with a longer life. Every 33 pounds of excess weight increases the chance of death by 30%. Let that set in for a second. Every 33 pounds increases the chance of death by 30%. By this estimate, a healthy weight person will live up to 10 years longer than an obese person. So think about that for just a second. You're a mother, you're a grandmother, you have children, you want to see your children get married, and you want to see your grandchildren, and you want to raise those grandchildren and spoil them and do all the things that you want to with them. The reality is this: if you're living an obese lifestyle, one of your motivating factors isn't to lose weight, it's to increase or improve your body fat percentage, because guess what? By doing so, you can increase your life expectancy by up to 10 years. So see, it's not just a short-term issue, it's a long-term issue, and we have to look at this differently. But most importantly, don't pay attention to that scale as a measurement of who you are. You're a lot more than that. It is a measurement tool, it's an accountability partner, but it's not who you are. Myth or fact number 3, muscle weighs more than fat. Can't tell you how many times I hear this one. It is a firm belief that a lot of people have, and it is 100% a myth. If I could take you back to school and remind you Galileo, Galileo stood on the Leaning Tower of Pisa and dropped a pound of rocks and a pound of feathers to determine whether or not one was going to hit the ground before the other. And what happened? They hit the ground at the same time, because a pound is a pound. It is a density issue. See, when you actually look at it, a pound of fat is on the right. It's like the size of a fist. A pound of muscle is like the size of a fist. It's on the right. A pound of fat is on the left. It's the size of 2 fists. So if you take your fist, that's a pound of muscle. Take 2 fists, put them together, that's a pound of fat. But the main thing that you need to pay attention to is that pound of fat is only going to burn 2 to 3 calories per day. Kind of your basal metabolic rate. That pound of fat is only going to burn 2 to 3 calories. A pound of muscle, though, can burn 7 to 10 calories per day. So we want more muscle because, 1, it's going to be more dense, take up less space on our body, which means we're not going to be as big. And 2, it's going to increase our metabolism, which is going to allow us to eat more but still maintain a healthy weight and or lose weight. The other aspect you can look at it is 5 pounds of muscle versus 5 pounds of fat. This is why you can't accurately assess your progress by just weight. You are losing fat while gaining lean muscle. See, a lot of people, when they use the scale, remember the last myth that we talked about, as their measurement tool of the progress that they're making, they're like, I haven't lost any weight. This isn't working. The reality is you're putting on muscle at the same time you're losing fat. They weigh the same, but guess what? It's all about how your clothes are fitting. It's all about how you're losing the circumference of your body. It's reducing your body fat percentage, remember. And 5 pounds of muscle versus 5 pounds of fat is a big difference, as you can see right here on the screen. So next time you want to say, or you have somebody tell you, hey, you only lost 1 pound this week? Yeah, congratulations. Look at what it is. Look at actually what it looks like. Ladies, gentlemen, think about right now where you would like to lose one of those. Don't get discouraged by the scale. Don't get discouraged by it's only a pound, or more importantly, it's only a half a pound. The reality is losing that is going to extend your life and, more importantly, improve your health. Myth or fact number 4, probably one of my greatest pet peeves here. A calorie is a calorie. If only that was true. And what's funny is there are a lot of people right now that are following this protocol as we speak because you're calorie counting. That's right. You started a health goal. You started a weight loss goal. You started a program of some type. There's hundreds of thousands of them out there. You have a tracker that you're basically monitoring your calorie intake. Really what you need to be focused on is your macronutrient intake. And I'll show you what that means, because this is an absolute myth. A calorie is not a calorie. If you thought a calorie was a calorie, it wouldn't matter if you're eating the things on the left or you're eating the things on the right, you would get the same result. From a weight perspective, that may be true. From a health perspective, nothing could be further from the truth. If you really want to see something, type into Google the Twinkie diet. There actually was somebody who, believe it or not, ate Twinkies and lost weight. Why? Because they were counting their calories. But guess what? Metabolically, they were a mess. Look behind the weight component of it and go in and look at the molecular component of what it's doing to your body. And what you're going to find is, yeah, you can lose weight on cheeseburgers. You can lose weight on Twinkies. But from a nutritional and a health standpoint, you're going to be an absolute wreck. A calorie is not a calorie. They are not created equal. In fact, if a calorie was a calorie, the nuts on the left and the Diet Coke on the right would have these designation. The Diet Coke is a low-calorie product, therefore it must be healthy. The nuts are higher calorie by volume, and they must be unhealthy if a calorie is a calorie, and that's your thought process. The reality is nothing could be further from the truth. Nuts are good fat. They actually are feeding the brain. They're really good for you in the proper proportion. Diet Cokes, there is no benefit. In fact, diet is an oxymoron. Diet Coke will produce 20% more insulin in the bloodstream than regular Coke because of the artificial sugar component. But it's not something you need to follow. In fact, if you believe a calorie is a calorie, then you're basically on the balanced diet approach. What that means is if I eat one of these things on the right, as long as I spend more time on the thing on the left, I'm fine. The reality is you're never going to out-train a bad diet. It's just not going to happen. And if you're following this calorie as a calorie approach, you're going to fail. If you don't believe me, just look at this. You want to have that cola? Sure. That's 54 minutes of lunges. The donut? 88 minutes of crunches. The chips and queso, 130 minutes in the pool. That pizza, it's only 159 minutes on the stair climber. Oh, that Starbucks special, that's only 170 minutes of Pilates. When we say that you are not going to out-train a bad diet, this is a prime example. You just can't get there. You need to stop focusing in on this calorie as a calorie thing. It's what you're feeding your body. You need nutritional value. You need nutritionally dense foods. And if you don't know what that means, stick around. We're going to do other trainings on other days and we'll teach you. But most importantly, do some research on your own. Find out what that means. Nutritionally dense foods, and you'll get the results that you're looking for. So next time that you think a calorie is a calorie, this is the visual that I want you to think about. Because the choices that we're making are either rusting or breaking down how our organs and tissues work, or they're helping it run like a fine-tool machine. Which do you want? Because the choices that we're making, the hand-to-mouth choices that we're making, I always say the number one killer in this country is hand-mouth disease. It's not heart disease like so many people tell you, because heart disease is a byproduct of the hand-to-mouth issue that you have. The reality is if we make better hand-to-mouth choices, then we are going to get the results that we're looking for. If we keep making the choices on the right, we're going to keep getting the results that we've always gotten, no matter whether or not you're counting your calories or not. Myth or fact number 5. It is best to eat many small meals throughout the day to stoke the metabolic flame. This is one I hear a ton from people. It's better to eat 5 or 6, 7 meals a day. Small meals. Eating instead of 3 meals or 2 meals, and it's better just to spread that out. You're going to keep stoking the fire. It's a myth. And when I say it's a myth, this isn't an opinion. It's actually scientific fact. Multiple studies have shown eating 2 or 3 meals a day has the same caloric burn as 5 or 6 or more smaller meals throughout the day. In fact, I put 2 studies on here that you can go read yourself. One was published in the British Journal of Nutrition in April 1997, the other in the British Journal of Nutrition in April 2010. They basically found, and as have many others, there's a very large French study that was done as well, that the number of meals does not matter for purposes of your metabolic burn. In fact, it's the same for smaller meals. So that is a myth. I'm sorry if that's your belief system, but science just doesn't hold that up. So, for all you people out there, again, the job here is not to defeat anybody's belief system. It's basically to give you the facts and then let you make your own informed choices. Myth or fact number 6. Eating fats will make you fat. Well, unfortunately, this one won a Nobel Prize. But it's both myth and fact. See, the problem that we have with some of these belief systems is that they're said as though they're universal. This one, eating fats will make you fat, and it's taken as a universal premise. The reality is it's both factual and it's also mythical, and I'm going to show you what I mean right now. See, all of this started, this fat component, fat will make you fat, fat causes heart attacks. All these different things started with President Eisenhower's heart attack. You know, this happened back in the 50s and 60s. You know, this heart attack occurred, and America went on this rampage of trying to figure out why we had this unbelievable increase of heart attacks in this country. It resulted in a battle royale, if you will, between two doctors. One, a physiologist named Ansel Keys, and the other, a doctor by the name of John Yudkin. Ansel Keys went on to win Times Man of the Year. He won a Nobel Prize in medicine because he developed the theory that fat was making us fat and causing heart disease and all the issues that we were dealing with. And that's why President Eisenhower had the heart attack that he had. John Yudkin, on the other hand, was vilified and died destitute because he was basically shunned by the medical community because his theory was it was not fat that was making us fat, it was actually sugar. In fact, he wrote the book Pure, White, and Deadly, trying to convince people in the 1960s that it was sugar that was doing this to us, not fat. Unfortunately, America went on the fat is making us fat trick as opposed to the Yudkin idea of sugar is making us fat. Fast forward almost 60 years, and what have we found? Dr. Yudkin was actually right. Dr. Keys was actually wrong. So the question at the bottom is, what if? What would America look like today had we followed Dr. Yudkin's advice and said, hey, we're going to limit the amount of sugar that's in the American diet? We'd probably be in a much different place from a health standpoint today had we followed that advice. The reality is when you look at low-fat, reduced fat, fat-free type products in the grocery store, usually what you're looking at is increased sugar, increased salt, increased chemicals, a combination of all of them or one of the other. So if you actually look at the label, when you see these items out there, and if you're on a weight loss journey, I mean, you very well may be grabbing these things thinking that you're making a good choice. But the reality is usually you're substituting the fat for sugar, salt, and other additives and chemicals. It's just the reality of what happens in the food supply. So there is a difference. There are two different types of fats. There are the bad fats and there's the good fats. Don't treat them all the same. This is why there is the myth and then there is the fact component of this. Not all fats are evil. Some are. Stay away from the bad stuff. You want to consume the good stuff in moderation because it is feeding the brain, feeding the body what it needs. Learn the difference between the two, but do not believe the universal statement that fat is going to make you fat. Myth or fact number 7. Eating saturated fat increases your risk of heart attacks. Well, before I give you the answer, whether or not this is a myth or a fact, I'm going to let that sit there for a second because a lot of you have heard this. You've seen this. You've talked to your doctor about this. Your doctor has given you information telling you to stay away from saturated fats, that they're going to cause heart disease. Some of you that are suffering with heart disease have been told, avoid your saturated fats. The answer? This is a myth. Again, not trying to be controversial here, just going to give you the facts, just going to give you what science has actually said about this issue. Several massive review studies have shown that saturated fat is not linked to an increased risk of death from heart disease or stroke. And when I say massive studies, the American Journal of Clinical Nutrition did one in March 2010. It's the meta-analysis of prospective cohort studies evaluating the association of saturated fat with cardiovascular disease. Yes, for some reason they use these long terms, but I can tell you, both the American Journal of Clinical Nutrition study, the Cochrane Heart Group study, and the Annals of Internal Medicine study published in 2010, 2012, and 2014 all came to the same conclusion, which is they found absolutely no correlation between the consumption of saturated fat and increased risk of death from heart disease or stroke. It did not exist. In fact, the fact was saturated fats raise HDL, the good form of cholesterol, and change the LDL particulates from small to large. Remember, not all LDL is bad. We want large LDL, not small LDL, which is linked to reduced risk of heart disease and stroke. So these are other studies that were done from the American Journal of Clinical Nutrition, Internal Journal of Cardiology, and the Journal of the American Medical Association. Yes, a JAMA article all the way back to 1996. Let that set in. This has been around for 22 years, but yet you still hear saturated fats are bad. 22 years we've known this, but yet we still hear this. Saturated fats raise the good cholesterol and change the bad cholesterol to good cholesterol. Both of those things are basically directly linked to reducing risks of heart disease and stroke. That is the fact. And in fact, if that wasn't good enough for you, a global study that just finished recently in 2017, a global study finds higher saturated fat intake reduces mortality or reduces death rates. That's right. This was just published in the Nutrition Review in October 2017. You can go look at it. It's called the PURE study. A lot of people have attacked this study. It was done over 18 countries, 5 continents, tens of thousands of participants. There's been a lot of what I would call traditional science folks that have attacked this PURE study's findings and tried to find ways to punch holes in it. But they came up with the same outcome, except for what they found was higher saturated fat intake actually reduces your death rate, not increases it like you were told. The PURE study actually came out and said, look, high carbohydrate diets were associated with a 28% higher risk of death. So that's right. If you have a high carbohydrate diet right now, you are increasing your risk of death. They found that as part of the study. I will tell you, though, a lot of the carbohydrates that were studied in that were the processed carbs. You're talking about your fast foods, your junk foods, your things like that. High total fat diets were associated with a 23% lower risk of death. High fat diets were associated with a lower risk of death, not a higher risk of death as you have been told. And low saturated fat diets were associated with an increased risk of death. That's right. If you reduced your saturated fat intake, if you reduced it because you were told to, you increased your chance or your risk of death, not decreased it as you have been told. So again, science is the science. I'm just giving it to you as it has come out. And in fact, this is the studies that have come out on the saturated diet issue. Myth or fact number 8, carbohydrates are bad for you. Well, that's a myth and a fact as well. It's kind of like saying, fat will make you fat. It's a universal saying that carbohydrates are bad for you. It's universal, but it doesn't necessarily apply because there are different types of carbohydrates. Let's see what we're talking about. You have a difference between simple and complex. See, simple carbohydrates basically are nothing but pure sugar. They're junk food. There's not much nutritional value there. Complex carbohydrates are the things that naturally occur in the fruits and vegetables that we consume. There's a big difference. The body treats them differently, and you need to understand carbohydrates universally are not good or bad. You need to stay away from the simple and focus on the complex. In fact, this is a better way of thinking about it. If all carbohydrates were treated the same, these people would look the same. The reality is the carbohydrates on the left are simple. The carbohydrates on the right are complex. You can pretty much eat as many of them as you want, and your body is going to treat you very well as a result of it. The simple carbs, you eat those and your body is going to treat you like you're doing something bad to it, and you're going to end up looking like the person on the left. Unfortunately, the SAD American diet, or the standard American diet, is the one on the left. It is just what is happening to us. That is what we're doing on a daily basis. 98% of people listening to this webinar in the next 48 hours are going to get a meal in a bag through a window of their car, and most of them are going to eat it while they're in the car, not even taking the time to get home with it. I always tell people, if you really want that fast food, that junk food, instead of paying attention to the commercial of what it looks like, go take a picture of the commercial and then go take a look at what you got in that bag and tell me if they look the same. Because what you'll find is if they commercialized what it really looks like when you get it, you wouldn't be eating it as much. This is the way that you need to think of complex carbohydrates. There's a fuel. They're fueling your body. But there is a difference between simple and complex. We need to feed our body the right things, and this will help us. These are things that are good for us. So don't think all carbs are bad, because they're not. Myth or fact number 9, consuming red meat increases your risk of all sorts of diseases. I hear this one all the time. 5th generation Texan here, been here, a long, long, long time if you look at the family tree. we like our red meat, and, you see these types of things and you're like, wow, that's kind of a universal statement that, consuming red meat increases your risk of all sorts of diseases. Well, that's actually a myth and a fact as well. It's both true and false, depending on what it is you're talking about. 2 independent studies, one with 1 million plus participants, the other with over 400,000, showed no link between unprocessed meat and increased risk of disease. Now, that's a very important differentiation. Unprocessed meats showed no increased risk of disease. That was both in the Journal of Circulation and the BMC Medicine study, where those were both published, that you can go look at yourself. But it's unprocessed meat. So unprocessed meat does not have that risk. There is a huge difference between that and processed meats, because processed meats are fattier, saltier, higher in calories, and contain more additives and preservatives. Things that I'm talking about here: sausages, hot dogs, salami, bacon, ham, salted and cured meats, corned beef, smoked meat, dried meat, beef jerky, canned meats. In essence, if you're eating these types of things, okay, according to multiple studies, you are increasing your risk of disease. Unprocessed meats do not have that same correlation, but processed meats, according to the Harvard Health Publishing, the red meat, avoid the processed stuff, that study, as well as multiple others, processed meats will increase your chances of disease. So again, don't take a statement as universal. You have to look deeper and find out where the information is actually coming from. In fact, if you look at processed meat consumption, what you're going to find is off the charts increases in all kinds of diseases, from higher stroke risks, increased risk of death, double the risk of lung disease, double the risk of heart disease, cancer, and diabetes, increased risk of colorectal cancer and early death, increased risk of bladder cancer, and increased risk of prostate cancer. Yes, if you're eating processed meats, sandwiches on a regular basis, salami, sausages, hot dogs, things like that, you are basically increasing the likelihood that you're going to have a lot of problems later on in your life. So, limit your consumption, if not completely eliminate your consumption of processed meats, and focus more on the unprocessed variety if you're going to eat meat. Myth or fact number 10. We are at number 10 now. Plant-based diets lack enough protein. I hear this all the time, especially from people that are meat eaters. When they're talking about vegetarians, it seems like, somebody's decided they want to go vegetarian. So the first thing we want to do is protect our belief system, so we attack theirs. Guys, that's just not something that we should do. I mean, people are choosing a healthy choice for a reason. In fact, we're going to learn something about a plant-based diet here in just a second that may change your mind. But most importantly, you need to understand that this is absolutely a myth. Is it a little bit more difficult? Maybe, but it doesn't mean that there's not enough. In fact, if you look at all of the plants that contain proteins, it's pretty easy to get to the numbers that you need in your protein consumption as long as you concentrate on watching that. Everywhere from spinach to almonds to quinoa to broccoli to avocados to spirulina, you have protein in a lot of different nuts, seeds, and vegetables. And this by no means is an exhaustive list. This is just an example of all of the protein that is available to people that are on a vegetarian diet. Plant-based diets have some real benefits for folks. In fact, if you're suffering from heart disease, or somebody that is, you should know that there is only one thing scientifically proven to ever reverse heart disease. Now, I'm talking about reversing it, unclogging the arteries, doing the things that, medicine can't do. Medicine will extend life, okay? It's a maintenance program, but it's not a curative program. I want you to make sure you hear that. You have heart disease and you're taking your pharmaceuticals, or you're taking your combinations of pharmaceuticals, or you're going through your procedures, you're not curing your disease, you're extending your life. The only way to cure it, the only thing ever proven to cure heart disease, has been a plant-based diet. In fact, if you want to learn more about that, you can go read Dr. Greger's book, How Not to Die. He has over 30,000 independent scientific articles referenced in his study. His story is amazing. He talks about his grandmother and what started him on this journey. In fact, you can go to nutritionfacts.org. He does not take money from third parties. He just doesn't do it. He gives you the straight out facts. And when you look at the science, the only thing proven to reverse heart disease has been a plant-based diet. So don't be quick to judge, because the reality is, the fact is, you can get plenty of protein and potentially get your health back by converting over to a vegetarian diet. Me personally, again, 5th generation Texan, real hard for me to give up meat. But I do know this: I'm not going to be the type of person that judges something without actually diving in and understanding it to the fullest extent. And this is one of those prime examples of a myth that I hear perpetrated all throughout society, so I wanted to address it. So why is there all this confusion? Why do we have all of these myths out there? Why do people keep having these beliefs in things that they think to be true, and reality is something completely different? Well, I was a lawyer for 20 years of my life. I guess in some respects I still am. But I go to, the source, try to find out where it is. And when you look at what these companies are sponsoring, where you're seeing them, anywhere from, sponsorships of the American Diabetes Association, American Cancer Society, Susan G. Komen, American Heart Association, a lot of these companies that produce a lot of these types of foods that are questionable on the health side of things with regard to your long-term health, they are sponsoring all of these amazing organizations that are doing their absolute best to get the information out there, to give you informed information so that you can make the right choices. But their sponsorship dollars and their names on some of these things, sometimes in the public view, do not associate necessarily to health along with the brand that they're sponsoring. And that's their intent. They're sponsoring these things in the hopes that the community will correlate the American Heart Association and its mission of, starving out heart related diseases with the products sold by some of these companies. Same thing with some of these other organizations. That's why they sponsor them. That's why there's the confusion. If you just look at Coca-Cola, some of the things that they are sponsoring, the American Diabetes Association, how much sugar is in a Coca-Cola? You can go figure it out yourself. The Obesity Society, really? The American College of Sports Medicine, Healthy Weight Commitment Foundation, the Physical Activity Plan, the Foundation for the National Institutes of Health. They're sponsoring all these because they're hoping there's an association of health with their product. The reality is maybe not so much. I love going back to Einstein and Jobs' teachings when I look for inspiration for some things. And this quote kind of stuck with me: if you can't explain it simply, you don't understand it well enough. One of the things I would challenge everyone that's on this webinar to do is, hey, if you have a belief system, understand that belief system enough to be able to explain why you believe it in a simple way. That's going to challenge you to go in and do your own research. It's going to challenge you to go figure out what the science says. It's going to challenge you to not just listen to what the first thing is on a Google search, but actually dive into the reason why that's the answer. What you're going to learn is a lot of things you believe to be true very well may be myths themselves. So that's kind of the challenge for the day. At ID Life, we're all about healthy living. We're all about providing you information so that you can make informed choices, not only for yourself, but for the people that you care about and that you love. And by providing that information in a free format. We do this every Wednesday to provide you direct, straight talk information so that you can make informed choices, so that you can live a happier, healthier life, but more importantly, so that you can get the results that you're looking for in the fastest, best way possible for you, the individual.